as your county executive, job one has to be keeping you and your family safe. And unfortunately and tragically, we live in a country where individuals can buy ghost guns online. They can go to a gun show and buy a military-style weapon. So we have to do everything at the local level to keep you and your families and your children safe. The question is about schools. So school resource officers were put in place to prevent violent crimes. I know when I used to drop my daughter off at high school several years ago, it was reassuring knowing that there was a police officer there. It happened to be one of those years where there was many shootings across the country. So I believe we can do that in a healthy way to keep our children safe. But equally important, it's important to make sure that the children feel respected. And in no way were those school resource officers meant to enforce minor infractions or over-police our Black and brown students. But I believe we can have it both ways, right? We have 26 high schools in Montgomery County. If it wasn't working in a few, let's fix it, right? So that our children are safe. The analogy that I would share, we have dozens of health clinics across the county. And if a few of them weren't working, we wouldn't just close them all down. No, we would get to the root cause and fix them, because I absolutely believe that we can keep our children safe and they can feel respected at the same time. So violent crimes are up, as you saw, across the county. The good news is we have a chief of police in Chief Marcus Jones that knows how to address this, but he needs the proper funding and he needs the support to make it happen. And so a year ago when we cut close to 30 positions from the police force, that was clearly concerning. So we need to restore those cuts, but also we need to support him and his team. And as I've been campaigning over the past year and literally trying to go to every organization and department that I can, and I meet with the police officers, they're literally looking at their shoes. They feel demoralized. And you hear things like, David, we're tired of being the political football, right? And so there's no reason or no doubt why early retirements are up and there's resignations and we're having a difficult time recruiting. So our police need to know that we're going to support all good police officers. But let's also look at the longer term problem here, right? Because we know that crime stems from a lack of opportunity for education and economic opportunities. This month, right, there'll be about 12,000 high school students in Montgomery County completing their senior year. 3,000 roughly will not be able to pass their entrance exams into the University of Maryland systems, nor have we trained them in a career, right? So basically they're going to be leaving high school and they're going to be destined to minimum wage jobs. That's unacceptable. And we can be investing in career and tech programs much earlier. So if they're not going to college, they can get out. And it's interesting, as you run for county executive, you go across the county, and on one hand, you see how employers are desperate for talent, whether that's healthcare, technology, trades, good paying jobs. But on the other hand, I'm with the nonprofit community, they're saying, David, we need good paying jobs. And I think the county executive can connect those dots and address crime from a long-term perspective. How are you going to pay for things, right? Because in Montgomery County, we want the best schools, we want affordable housing, we want great transit solutions. Well, that costs money, and that money comes from a flourishing business environment. And not to bore you with too many statistics, but this is shocking. Over the last 10 years, $5.2 billion is the net tax migration. Meaning if you add up the W-2s of people that came in and you subtracted the W-2s that left, we have a huge deficit. That's your tax base, and we need that to pay for all the priorities that we so value in Montgomery County. Now it's interesting, when I started a business in Montgomery County 25 years ago, I didn't have a perspective of whether it was easy or difficult to do business in Montgomery County. But only later, when we grew to a Fortune 500 company, we had offices in 30 states and thousands of employees, I started to realize, wow, Montgomery County is the most challenging place to do business. And I'm not exaggerating. And it wasn't one thing, it's everything. And so over the last 10 years since we sold that business, I put more effort into figuring out how we're going to get this economy going. And I've met with hundreds of business leaders, chamber leaders, government officials to understand what we can do to get this economy going. It's why I've developed a business bill of rights. So things that we're going to offer to our businesses around permits, inspections, procurement, making sure that we have adequate access to talent, that we're training people the right ways. I believe we can leverage what we have. The small business community that we have in Montgomery County is phenomenal, but they could use better support. We need to make sure they have access to capital so they can grow their businesses. We also have this wonderful entrepreneurial spirit in Montgomery County. 1 out of 3 of our residents was born outside the United States. Think how entrepreneurial that is, right? They had to learn a new system, a new culture, maybe a new language, and yet we're lagging the region in new business growth. I'm going to harness that entrepreneurial spirit, reverse those trends so that we can pay for our priorities. So traffic is horrible, and we've got to use every tool in the toolbox to address this. So if it's our roads, like fixing the bottleneck at American Legion Bridge has to get done. And if we think it's bad now, wait until Virginia's managed lanes. They've already started construction when they reach there. Mass transit, right? We got to get the Purple Line finished. We got to leverage the infrastructure that we have in place, because these are things where we can have an immediate impact, like our Ride-On bus. So ridership on Ride-On was down 25% in the 10 years up until the pandemic. So it dropped 25% before the pandemic. Right? So who was asleep at the switch when that happened, right? So we've got to be reimagining our bus routes. Other cities have done this, and they've seen ridership jump up. In Houston, they did this, and they saw ridership on the weekends jump something like 20% and close to 10% during the week. So not only reimagine bus routes, let's make bus fares free. And they're going to do a better job of leveraging technology so riders know, when the bus is going to be there and whether there's availability. So we got to leverage the infrastructure that we have in place. Even our existing roadways, we can make them more efficient. There's something called adaptive traffic signals. Now, this isn't a silver bullet. It's not going to fix all of our problems, but where there's roads where they're not at capacity, they can make them more efficient. And so if we can do that, let's say like 355, a north-south corridor that's always congested. If we can make that more efficient, maybe we could put a dedicated lane in there for bus rapid transit, or a dedicated lane for bicycles and pedestrians. So I want to leverage the infrastructure we have in place while also looking for longer term solutions, like having a Marc station at Shady Grove, right? Those are the types of things, expanding Marc service to have midday train rides. Those are the types of things that we need to do to address the congestion that we find ourselves in. So I hope the viewers at home are starting to see trends. So we've talked about public safety, crime, jobs, traffic, and now housing. They're all going in the wrong direction. And so the elected leaders to my right, they've had decades to address these problems. I'm tired of waiting, right? These are actionable things that we could be doing. Other parts of the country are making meaningful progress, and we're not. It sounds a lot like, a county council meeting from 2012 or 2014 or 2016 to my right. And so as it relates to affordable housing, yes, we have a crisis that needs to be addressed, and it affects you, because this is our quality of life. We need nurses here. We need teachers, and they can't afford to live here. And if they can't afford to live here, eventually they say, I don't want to drive 45 minutes, and I'm going to work in Howard County or Frederick County or someplace else. I was actually with the CEO of Adventist Healthcare, big hospital system here in Montgomery County. Number one thing, so he has to hire 600 nurses in the next 2 years, he said. Number one thing was affordable housing. He needed housing. And so we see affordable housing, it could be workforce housing, any kind of housing we need here. We also have great opportunities in Montgomery County. We actually have parcels of land that we could be utilizing. So whether it's land near our metros, right, which would be a great place. It's where our 25-year-old son would love to live, right? Because where he could live in an apartment, go down the elevator, jump on the metro, go to his job. So those mixed income, mixed use developments, we could be building them around our metros. We also have county-owned land that we could be better taking advantage of. Because if you truly want affordable housing, you need affordable land, and the land's pretty expensive in Montgomery County. But if the county owns it, we can dictate the terms to the developers. So this is a crisis. I believe it's a fundamental right. If you work in this county, you should be able to afford to live in this county. And that's the kind of action that I'm going to bring as your county executive. So what's happening at the Supreme Court is outrageous. It's literally taking us back 50 years. And so we've got to do everything at the local level to protect women's health, to protect their right to choose. And I'm confident that we'll do that, knowing Montgomery County the way I do. We also need to be working with our state delegation to make sure that our state laws are airtight and there's no room for misinterpretation. But when you think about Annapolis and the role that the county executive can play, it can be much broader than it is today, right? You have 32 delegates, and so it's not just about protecting women's rights or expanding access to health care. There's huge opportunities there. And I look at our 32 delegates, and I spent much time with them this past session, and they all did a good job. They brought back tens of millions of dollars here, millions of dollars there. Meanwhile, in Prince George's County, Angela Alsobrooks, she brought back $2.6 billion. $400 million along the Blue Line to invest near FedEx Field with an amphitheater, a civic center, a library, a market hall. And I think about what kind of investment that would be for areas like White Oak and how we could really spur that development. And so executive leadership is what we need. Because clearly we have the ideas, you heard them today. We have the talent in Montgomery County, we have the funding, but we need someone who knows how to get things done. And that's what I bring to this equation, right? And as an executive, you're setting those ambitious goals, right? Then you're making sure you have the right talent in place. You're removing the obstacles, right? You're holding people accountable, and you're getting things done. And that's the kind of leadership that I'm going to bring to Montgomery County. I have confidence in the voting process, and I actually have firsthand experience. I lost to the gentleman to my right by 77 votes 4 years ago, and this is in a county with 1 million residents. And so we started looking at the various precincts, and we're looking at the votes, and we're desperately trying to find some inappropriateness, like anything. There wasn't. I would recommend and encourage you, make sure you're properly registered to vote. In the last election, we had 1,000 rejected provisional ballots. They were properly rejected, but it's people that thought they were registered and they weren't, and then their votes didn't count. So make sure you're registered properly.